I'm Laetitia.
Hello.
From Son of Violence. How long have you been working this comeback? Can you just tell us briefly how did you come back to business altogether?
Yeah, at different times. So Stephen started to work with Gavin in around 2012 with no real project in mind, just the enjoyment of making music together. And around at Gavin's house there's just a bass guitar, there's no guitars, so Stephen started playing bass and they instinctively started writing things together with Stephen on bass, so obviously it had a different kind of energy. And I guess for them things started then, for me things started a lot later. And my process is sending Stephen things, sending him ideas. Whereas with Gavin, he works in the room with Gavin. So there's a more musicality between those two, and between us two there's more sound design, atmosphere, emotion, kind of telling a story.
How in the process did you unify all your work?
That kind of came together more recently. Once all three of us were incorporated into each other's compositions, then it was sounding exciting, but it still had the Porcupine Tree essence. And with just three, it kind of almost distilled this essence down to the core, with no other musicians, no orchestrations, no guests, just the three of us. Engineering, producing, arranging, and it became clear. I think one day you were out walking and listening to all the tracks, weren't you?
Yeah, so my story is just the beginning of lockdown. Obviously, the beginning of lockdown was a surprise to all of us in this room. And I had a tour cancelled at that point, and I suddenly had this big chasm of available time opening up in front of me, like we all did. And one of the things, I started writing my book, and one of the other things was I thought, okay, let's knuckle down and finish all these songs we've been developing for the past 7 years. And I put all of them on my phone, and I went out for a long walk in the woods one day, and I listened to all the stuff we had, and I came back, and I thought, I need to contact the guys, because I think we've got something really special here. And I wasn't sure, really, until I heard it all together, and I thought we had the makings of a great album. And even at that point, I still felt we needed to write a couple of extra songs, which we did. But I think it's fair to say that if it wasn't for lockdown, we wouldn't be sitting here now, because it gave us the time, the inclination, the focus to actually knuckle down and finally finish this record. One good thing we can thank lockdown for, yes, yeah.
Hi.
Hi there.
My name is Chloe, and I'm so happy you are back with a new album after all this time. It's an amazing album. As you said, you work on some of the songs for a long time. What was the most challenging thing on this album? Maybe challenging song for personal reason or technique? I don't know.
From my point of view, the most challenging thing was to come back with an album that didn't simply sound like more of the same. And I say that because historically, when we stopped in 2010, I think myself and Richard both agree on this, we both had a feeling that the band had started to repeat itself. And that for me was a red flag. So the last album we made, The Incident's a good record, but there was nothing new about it. It felt like the band was beginning to define itself in this very narrow context. And I felt like I wanted to go off and do other things, work with other musicians, try different styles. And you can't always do that in the context of a band. So that for me was the moment when I thought we need to stop this. So the process of building towards releasing a new record was a slow one, because we were searching for an evolution in the sound, but at the same time, of course, it had to be recognisable as Porcupine Tree. And I think that's what we have achieved. I think time will tell, but from what I understand, most people that listen to the record come away with the feeling that, wow, this is Porcupine Tree. It's instantly, quintessentially Porcupine Tree, but at the same time, it sounds fresh. And that, if there was a challenge or there was a goal, then that was it. I think developing the material was almost effortless. I mean, we had so much fun making this record. You know, I felt more relaxed because I have my solo career now, so I was very happy to defer much more responsibility in the writing, the production, to teamwork. And I'm not really naturally a team player, you know, I never have been. So, but now I feel like I can be more of just one of the guys in the band. And I think that's why the album sounds so it's quite a depressing, dark record, but it's got a lot of joy. It feels like it's a band enjoying making music. I hope it feels that way.
When you listen just to the bass line at the beginning of the album, you know that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And different. And
Yeah, different,
But
radically
people, when they heard
different.
that bass, first song we released, a lot of people were like, what is this, you know? But then the other elements start to come in and it starts to sound more familiar, Porcupine Tree sound, yeah.
Hi, Stephen, Richard. Welcome back to France and welcome back Porcupine Tree. The question I had in mind, you were mentioning just earlier that you've been working with Gavin on some new material years ago. But besides that, were there any leftover material from the previous recording session which has been used for this new album, or besides those early recording years ago with Gavin, you all everything was started from scratch?
Yeah, we started with a blank page. I mean, there are some songs left over from previous eras, but they're left over for a reason. We started with a completely clean sheet, and we started with a very different writing philosophy, which is we are going to write together. Okay. And again, that's very different. In fact, one of the things that's most different about this record is that almost, with the exception of one song, everything on this record was written either with myself collaborating with Richard or collaborating with Gavin.
Okay.
And that is very unique. I mean, in the Porcupine Tree world, that's usually, historically, I would bring 75% of the record already written to the rest of the guys. This time I'm like, if we're going to do this, there's no point me writing it. I'd write for my solo. There's no point. So if we're going to do a new Porcupine Tree record, let's start from scratch and let's develop material. Maybe, Richard, you want to explain about how that works with you and I?
Yeah, I mean, the difference is previously, as Stephen said, he would come in with a more or less formed demo song and then we would play over the top. We'd put our own personality on, but over the top. With this recording, there is the essence of what Gavin and I do there from the beginning. That means that the work goes in a different direction and Stephen follows on from that. So in our relationship, it's more me giving him soundscape, sound design, musical passages, atmospheric pieces, just if he can pick something up and get a feeling from. And then usually, well, there'll be one piece that will get through and that will inspire Stephen to do some lyrics, to start crafting together a song. Then that comes back to me. And then I react to the lyrics again. And this is what happened with Dignity, the track on the album. It had this back and forth thing where we created this world that the character was living in, from the schoolyard through to old age. And it's like a journey.
I have a second question, if I may. You recently mentioned that joining you on the forthcoming tour are Randy McStein on additional guitar and Nate Navarro on bass. How did you end up picking up those two musicians, which are, it's a no-brainer, they're fantastic, so I have no doubt their addition will be benefit to the band, but how did you end up choosing those guys?
Gavin. I mean, to be honest, I'd never heard of them, but we've now played with them, and they're amazing. So Gavin is kind of the MD of the band. Gavin is the proper musician in the band.
Yeah.
Me and Richard fight over who's the worst musician in Porcupine Tree. He thinks it's him, I think it's me.
Says you.
But Gavin is an exceptional musician, and I completely trust him. So Gavin had these. I think Gavin played on one of Randy's albums in the past.
Possibly.
He knew Randy from somewhere, and I think he found Nate online. He found some YouTube clip and said, "This guy's amazing on bass." So he reached out to them, and me and Richard weren't familiar with them, but we've now rehearsed with them the new material, and wow, as you say, incredible.
Yeah.
But they were found by Gavin, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hello, Richard.
Hi.
Hello, Stephen. First of all, thanks a lot for your career and your amazing production and the last album, which is really great. I have several questions for you. The first one is, okay, you have around 30 years of career, something like 11 records. What are you most proud of looking back to your career?
I think the thing that I'm most pleased with, not necessarily even just specifically with Porcupine Tree, but my whole career, is that we or I, the collective Porcupine Tree, and also in my own work outside of Porcupine Tree, I feel like we have created our own musical universe. And I say that because I think a lot of people end up very much associated with a specific genre. And I think we've always kicked against that, although people have tried to, progressive rock is the word that comes up the most in relation to us. And I understand why, of course I understand why, some of the music we've made is clearly from that tradition, but I think there's always been other elements to what Porcupine Tree and I have done that had nothing to do with that. And so it's been a kind of fight in a way to assert that our right to be considered somehow outside of generic classification. So, the best example I can give is when you think of someone like Kate Bush or you think of someone like David Bowie, you don't think of them as being generic artists. You think of Kate Bush, just plays Kate Bush music. David Bowie just plays David Bowie music. And I think that's something you earn across a career. And I like to think in our own way we've earned that right now, to be considered as a band that have created our own musical world. We just make Porcupine Tree music. So yes, there's metal riffs, there's funky grooves, there's ambient textures, there's singer-songwriter elements, there's industrial, there's all these elements going on. And somehow they all coalesce into something that people instantly recognise as the Porcupine Tree sound. And I can't explain that any better than anyone can, but it is instantly recognisable. And I think that's very clear from this album. There's new things going on, but instantly, it's Porcupine Tree. So I don't know if that answers your question. In a way, that's what I'm most proud of, that we seem to have created this unique sound of our own.
Yeah, just over a very even longer career in my instance, just being able to create the music that you want to without any commercial concerns, and to keep being involved with music for my whole life, that's incredible. That's the success for me. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have 2 more questions. Okay, during all this time, the last 7 years, you have been very busy with your own projects, playing with other bands, for some of you. Have you been in contact during this time?
Sure.
Yeah, we made the album.
Yeah, as I say, we've been making the album since 2012. Yeah. I think, it may appear that we've suddenly come back from nowhere, having not talked to each other for 10 years, but the reality is we were making this album for the last 10 years. Yeah.
Okay. And even if we weren't making the album, I would still send in music, we'd still talk, socialise.
And what happened when you came back for the first time all together in the studio playing?
What happened?
Yeah, kind of magic. Or what were your emotions, your feelings?
Stephen loved it, and me and Gavin were just concentrating on playing this material, and we didn't look at him. And it was
we all set up and we started playing this material, and I was like a big grin on my face, looking around at everyone, and they were all like. And I was a bit nonplussed actually. But since then we've rehearsed together, and now you guys are starting to relax a bit more.
Exactly. Yeah. I think if you're being filmed and recorded at the same time, then you're very aware that the audio has to be good, and so we were taking it quite seriously. If you
watch, there's a bunch of clips we recorded at Air Studios, which is what we're talking about. If you watch them, you'll see me looking around the whole time.
No one looking.
And then every time the camera's on Richard or Gavin, it's just like. So that's what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Stephen Richard, I'm Frank from Hackton Road. I'd like to speak about some titles from the new album. For me, it's one of the more aggressive albums for me. It's more metal, progressive metal. And I'd like to speak about just one title, like Never Had. And like, is that a denunciation of the world of today, or an accessible dream for people, or some people?
So you're asking?
This song is very romantic, and it's really hurt me.
Yeah, you're asking specifically about the lyrics.
The lyrics, yes.
I think, I have stepchildren now. 3 years ago I got married, and I have 2 stepchildren. First time in my life I have stepchildren. It's hard not to look at the younger generation and not feel like there's a sense of. I think it works in a positive and a negative way. I think a lot of the younger generation now feel very entitled in the way that I didn't when I was young. You know, you don't need me to tell you that young people now get pretty much everything when they're very young. The idea that I would have a TV in my room was like fantasy when I was a 14-year-old kid, you know. Now children have cell phones when they're 10. They have everything they could possibly want even before they leave school. So there's a sense of entitlement there. So never have is kind of about that, you know. Of course, the one thing they don't have is fulfillment. And how do you achieve fulfillment? You struggle for it. Without struggle, I don't think there's any way to achieve fulfillment. Now, of course, that's simplification because there's a whole other struggle that has to go on with kids like that. How do they make themselves count in a world where there are more people competing? You know, just to look at the world of music now. I mean, Spotify, there's some ridiculous statistic like there's 70,000 songs uploaded to Spotify every single day. That's more. That means more music is being made in 2022 than at any other time in history. If you want to be a musician now, you're competing with more other people than any other time in history. How do you possibly break through? So that's just a small example in the music world, but I think that applies. That's a microcosm for the whole universe. There are more people on this planet than any time before competing for the attention, the same opportunities. I worry about children and how that affects them mentally and how that will affect their sense of fulfillment in the future, ambition, goals. And so what I have is kind of, without wishing to explain too much about it, that's kind of what that's referring to. Yeah.
And about the rights, who's the rights? You're speaking about some dictators in the second lyrics.
So Rat's Return is fairly obviously about politicians and about... Have you seen that movie? The best way I can explain it, have you seen that movie, Don't Look Up, the Netflix movie? I wrote the song long before I saw that, but you know how the whole kind of subtext of that movie is that the politicians and the powerful people on earth will essentially, at the end of the day, they'll just save themselves.
But first, seeing if
Thank
they
you
can
very
make money from it.
But first see if they can make money from it, and then they'll save
themselves.
themselves. Yeah. Fuck the rest of the planet. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Thorsten.
Hi.
Yeah, many fans wouldn't have expected the band to be back as a reunion. So fans' expectations are very high, you can imagine. Very simple question, was there or is there any pressure for you after all these years still?
No, the unique thing about this recording was it was the first time in our professional life there was no pressure. Because we both thought about this, and since we got involved in music, we were signing contracts to promise to make albums. We were going with agencies to promise to play concerts. There was always another album option. There was always management saying what you do next. So there was always a pressure to do something. And this was the first time that nobody knew. There was no pressure whatsoever. We could just make the music that we wanted to make. And if we didn't like it, we could have just pushed it aside and carried on. It kind of made us feel free. And it's part of the process that's made the album what it is, just not having that pressure. And even with the title, we built more no pressure. Closure, continuation. There's no pressure, could be either. We win with each decision.
It always sounds terrible when I say this, but I don't mean it to sound terrible. I actually don't care what fans want or expect. And let me just explain what I mean by that. I think that is exactly what all artists should feel. They should never think about what their audience want or expect from them. And that doesn't mean I don't care what the audience think about. I do. You know, I would be very happy if everyone loved this record. Of course I would, and I'd be disappointed if they didn't. But it wouldn't make any difference. It wouldn't make any difference. We're releasing this album because we think it's good. We think it's strong. We think it's one of the best things we've ever done. If we didn't, we wouldn't be releasing it. We wouldn't be releasing it just to satisfy a demand or an expectation. And similarly so, it won't make any difference to me. I'm aware of the expectation. I acknowledge the expectation, but I'm also largely immune to it. I never read. Richard reads all the comments on all the web. I never do.
I don't. He's lying again.
He's on YouTube.
I think on the back of his book it says I lie. in interviews, and it's true, he does, and he contradicts himself a lot. But I have looked at all the comments for Harridan on YouTube, and it's really positive. But it's not something I spend my days doing. It does.
Hi, Richard. Hi,
Hi
Steven.
there.
Steven, on your latest solo album, The Future Bites, you took a direction that may have confused fans by introducing electro sound and so. Is Porcupine Tree a way for you to come back to a more rock universe, while your solo career would be rather toward new musical direction?
I mean, that would suggest there's some logic to the way I've planned this, and there isn't really. I mean, I think I completely understand why you would ask that question. I think the timing is really good, because it's like my solo career has diversified quite a long way away now from Porcupine Tree sound. There are times when it's very close. Album like Hand Cannot Erase could easily have been Porcupine Tree album in another universe, but now it's diversified so far away from rock, really, that it almost makes sense now that there's these two parallel strands. But there is a caveat to all this, which is that the Porcupine Tree album was written over a very long period of time, and actually the most recent songs that were written for the record are also the least rock. Like Walk the Plank, there's no guitar in that at all, and that in a way is symbolic of the fact that I've become less interested in guitars. So it's the album, the gestation period of the album spans such a long period of time that it spans this period of time when I've gradually moved away from guitars and rock music, but by virtue of the fact that it was started so long ago, there's still a lot of that rock element present. Does that make sense? I think if we'd written and recorded the whole album in the last year, then I think it would be closer to the Future Bites in sound. Do you see what I'm saying? But because it was started in 2012 and written in 2014, it's got elements of all these different periods, you know, that we've all been through, you know. Who knows?
Hello guys, Joe from Loud TV. You were talking about electronics and keys, and which I like, you know, some details, like on the song Rats Returns. There are some, you know, these are keys, I would say, like 70s stuff. Like I was thinking about Star Trek with the female vocals, and I was diving into the 70s. So is it for you the best decade for art in general?
I don't know, but on that actual track, that's kind of exactly what I was doing. I was using 70s vintage synths, and I was trying to create this sort of mad, chaotic, like BBC Workshop. You know, we have this sound design thing at the BBC. This weird kind of, like a professor in a laboratory or something. Just like experiments going on. And it's this chaotic thing that just comes through in the background, isn't it? During that section. Totally analog, just things running. I can't find the sound again. I have to somehow find a way to recreate that. But yeah, that's the way I reacted to that particular section.
I think the subtext of your question is, was music better in the 70s? Is that what you're asking?
Music or art in general?
I don't think. I mean, I think the 70s is amazing for rock music. I grew up in the 80s. I loved post-punk music, bands like Cocteau Twins and The Cure. That was my generation. And then I think the 90s is incredible for electronic music. Aphex Twin, Ortega, Square Pusher. So I think it depends on the kind of musical preferences you have. Certainly for rock music and progressive rock music and conceptual rock music, which of course is a big part of what we do, the 70s is clearly the kind of pinnacle of that genre, yeah. Yeah, another question from this gentleman.
Thank you. In a few months, you guys will be on the road touring for this new album. Have you actually started to think about what could be a set list and how would you include this new material regarding the old material from Porcupine Tree? Are you trying to find have you managed to find some sort of balance to make it like some sort of fluid or smooth transition-wise?
Yeah, we think we've got it. Of course, once we start rehearsing everything, there might be minor changes, but obviously the key points is to play the new album, obviously,
Makes sense.
and then to focus in on the two albums that we feel are the strongest in our catalogue, which is In Absentia and Fear of a Blank Planet, but not to ignore the rest, to find some others from previous, and also maybe one or two we haven't done before.
Okay.
I think we're trying to get the strongest material, the material that we still feel closest to and proud of.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I want to ask something about potential new listeners. Do you think that this new record is in some way accessible to complete new listeners? Do you think and do you expect? Because you said that you made yourself free from your fans' expectations, which are, like my colleague said, quite strong. Some have been very harsh on the internet. You know, those 2 years ago when you did your solo work. You know it. So, do you feel serene and?
It's a very difficult question to answer. I mean,
Sorry.
It's all right. I think I always think that it's a mistake to underestimate the capacity for people to. One of the common mistakes I think the industry makes these days often is trying to pander too much for the TikTok, the kind of 15-second attention span. And I believe, and there's obviously a big swing in that direction in terms of the way people engage with and discover music, the younger generation predominantly discovering music, on their phone. But I always believe that there is, for every big swing in one direction of the pendulum, there's always a little swing back in the other direction. People are looking for something to engage with on a deeper level. You see it in the world of cinema, you see it in the world of television, and you see it, in other art forms too. And I suppose in that sense, Porcupine Tree could be considered the true alternative band. I mean, when people talk about alternative music, they think of Nirvana. Actually, what could be more mainstream than Nirvana? That's not alternative, But in a way, a band like Porcupine Tree is the true alternative. It's offering people a harder listen, a listen that something you need to engage with on a deeper level, perhaps give more time to, and you get what you bring to it. And I like to think that we cater for those people out there that still are looking for that deeper, more profound musical experience. Now, are those people actually there, or is it a fantasy of mine? I'll find out. We'll find out. We haven't made a record for so long. I don't know. I mean, you referenced my last solo album, and that was a very divisive record. I always take perverse pleasure if I'm upsetting people. Now, so far, people seem broadly very positive about this record, and which actually sends a little bit of an alarm bell in my head, thinking, well, maybe we should have been more radical and upset more people. But obviously, at the same time, I'm very happy that people are really enjoying this record. Time will tell.
Just to finish.
Yes.
I've read that you've been described some years ago as, if I'm not mistaken, the most successful band we've never heard of. Something like this. I can't remember who said it. This is quite funny, and I don't know if
think
it's
it was
true.
The Guardian said I was the most successful artist you've never heard of. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
still stick to this definition after this break, and with you being older and much mature, and with your experience? Well,
I guess. I mean, I think although Porcupine Tree has a substantial audience now. Probably bigger than, for sure bigger than we ever did when we were active in our previous incarnation. The legend has continued to grow in our absence. Absence makes the heart grow stronger and all that, which is amazing because that means the music has not fallen off a cliff. It's continued to grow in stature, and which is amazing. If you went out on the street now and asked 100 people if they've ever heard of Porcupine Tree, I'd be surprised if you get more than 2 that would say yes.
I'd be surprised if you get one.
I'd be surprised if you get 1. Well, I might be wrong, but my hunch is that probably still most people on the planet have never heard the band. So in that sense, I think probably the statement, the quote, which is a good quote, it's clickbait and all that, but it still kind of applies, I think, largely. Yeah, sadly, or maybe not sadly. Maybe it's it's good that that's the way.
In these times, yeah. But if this was the 70s and we were getting coverage in the magazines and the national newspapers that we're getting, if we had that in the 70s, everybody would know about us. There would be at least 20 people of every 100 who would know. It's just a different world now. It's too spread out, too many people, too many different...
fractalized.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have another question. Maybe this one is silly or naive, but I would like to know if Porcupine Tree developed any specific relationship with France or with the French audience.
Well, we were just talking about this earlier, how much me and Richard both agree. We love France, and we're not just saying it. We love it. We've always...
And we're English.
We're English, yeah. We've we're not supposed to like the French, but we do. No, we love France. I've always loved France. I consider myself a bit of a Francophile, French music, French culture. The hotel we're staying in could not be more French, and we love it.
It's just
pictures of naked ladies on the walls and arty, vintage, but everything about, and we love it. We absolutely love it. And we've been coming here probably as long as anywhere, haven't we?
We have, but we'd be lying if we said that our strongest audience was here from the beginning, because
it took a while. Yeah.
In the beginning, our strongest audience and our kind of spiritual home in Europe was Rome, in Italy, where we got the most attention, where the national radio station was playing our music, and people just warmed to us and they got what we were doing. So places like Rome, follow Greece as well to some extent,
and then Holland,
and then France. But it's a place we love coming to, and our audience is obviously growing. We're doing well, I think, with our tickets for our show. So things are definitely going in a good direction for us.
Another 50 years, and we might actually really make it in France.
Yeah.
No, it's going great. We love coming here, and we're a fan.
And we have played around the country quite a few times, haven't we?
We have. In fact, in my solo tours, I've been to some towns that we've never even been to. But we've never even been to. Yeah.
Another question from me. This question is more for Stephen.
That's a surprise.
Can somebody ask Richard a question about Japan or something?
Yes, that's all I've done.
You're a very successful solo artist, and you said you're not the collective guy, more or less. A team player. That's what you said before. What is it like to be back in a band, actually?
Yeah, I said I'm not naturally a team player. I think naturally I tend to be quite solitary, and I like to control things a lot. But I think what's beautiful about this scenario now is, having established a solo career, I feel very, very relaxed and very good about being, deferring responsibility and being part of a team in a way that I never did in the past with Porcupine Tree. I think I always felt like I was neither one thing nor the other. I felt like, well, I'm in this band, but I feel like I also have to control it, and I have to be a front man, but I don't really embrace the whole idea of being a front man. I didn't feel completely comfortable with that. It's almost like having gone away and become a solo artist, and having learned to be comfortable being a front man, being up on stage, being the captain of the ship and all that stuff. Now I can come back to Porcupine Tree. Finally, I can come back to Porcupine Tree and say, okay, now let's be a team, guys. And that's why the writing process and all of these things have been much more shared and democratic this time. And I love it. And I love it because I know I have this other strand of my career. If I didn't have that, I'd probably be this frustrated, neurotic control freak with this band again. And I'm so happy that I don't have to be, and that I can allow myself to enjoy being part of a team.
Is that...
And so to finish, almost finished. With this album coming out very soon, do you have some future project, maybe music video or something?
Yeah, we're shooting a video for one of the songs on the record, a proper video rather than a lyric video. Shooting a proper video for one of the songs on the record next week.
And many songs will have films as well.
Okay.
In the live,
in the live
context. Yeah. So we're working on the show now. Yeah.
do you really love like cinema? Because some of your music are very long and I like it. Like I think the longest is Chimera's Wreck,
Yeah.
9 minutes.
Yeah.
So you take inspiration from this, and we will see it in your music video, maybe lyrics video.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that cinema is a big. I always felt our music was very analogous to cinema because it's almost like when you listen to one of our songs, the songs have like scenes. So it's not the traditional verse, chorus, bridge. It's like these scenes that kind of unfold, and like when you watch a movie, you have one scene where the characters are sad, and one scene where the characters are suddenly, happy, and then there's a tragedy, and you have these kind of emotional shifts in cinema, which you don't normally have in pop songs. Pop songs usually they're either a happy song or a sad song. But one of the beautiful things about conceptual rock music or progressive rock music, or whatever you want to call it, which I guess comes from the tradition of classical music, is that within the same song you can have different moods and different scenes. So there's always been an analogy for me between the way I write music and the way I enjoy cinema. And of course that's sort of followed through into the visual world. In my solo career, I was very committed to making always great videos and different videos. And we've been pretty much up against it in terms of time with this record. But we're finally beginning to think about making some strong visuals for the show. And as I said, we're going to release a video for one of the songs on the record soon.
One last question. Steven, years ago, regarding the promotion for To The Bone, you were part of a French TV show named Taratata. Several questions about this show and this experience you have. First of all, has Nagui contacted Porcupine Tree to make a live appearance coming soon?
You'd have to speak to Olivier, our promotions guy here. I think Nagui is a very big fan now, which is amazing. In fact, I was going to go back on the show for the Future Bites, and then of course COVID sort of kicked in and I couldn't do it, which is a shame. But he invited me back. I think there's a problem with Porcupine. Just leading on from the last question, the length of the songs is a problem for mainstream, popular TV. I don't know what we would do. And I think that's a headache for Olivier here. How do you sell this record to pop media? Without, at least on my solo records, I would have occasional songs like "Permeating," which were, here's an album that doesn't really make any concessions to the world of pop culture.
Has your appearance on this show brought new fans of Porcupine Tree, essentially?
I hope so. I mean, it was a massive help on that album. I mean, that album was the best-selling album I've ever had in France. I think largely as a consequence of the support from that show and a few other radio stations. It did really well. I would be very happy if this new Porcupine Tree record would do anywhere near as well as that record. But as this young lady here said, she discovered Porcupine Tree through my solo work. So I think there's been an element of everything we've done, not just myself, but Richard and Gavin playing with King Crimson, for example, that has kept Porcupine Tree kind of, in a way, in the limelight without us making any records, just by virtue of all of these other things we've done in the interim. And then people kind of discover it, and they discover that there's this whole other world of Porcupine Tree, things that we did before. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci à tous.
Merci. Thank you very much.
See you in November. Absolutely.